I started out as a construction worker directly out of high school, and I was always home brewing. I really enjoyed the blend of the art and science behind it. So, continued to homebrew throughout my construction career, and as the economy started to slow down in the U.S. a little bit, and the building trades were working less and less, I started volunteering at a local brew pub. And at that local brew pub, they would pay me in beer and food on any days that I was off of my normal job, and come in and they'd put me to work. I'd do anything that they told me to do so that I could hopefully learn as much as I could from a real professional brewer. As time progressed, I started working at the brew pub more and less in construction. And eventually I realized I was spending all of my hours working full-time at the brew pub. So I decided that it was time to bite the bullet, and I went to brewing school. So I went to Siebel Academy, which is in Chicago, and they have a sister school, which is Doman's Academy, which is located just outside of Munich, and attended their Master Brewer Certification program. After that first brew pub, after coming back from brewing school, I worked for the same pub that I volunteered for. I went to Bell's Brewery for a little while, but I wanted to come back to Chicago. An opportunity opened up at another brew pub outside of the city named Emmett's, and I started brewing there. While brewing there, it just so happens, by sheer coincidence, somebody who I was good friends with that also worked with Bell's with me, his best friend was living in the same town as the brew pub that I worked in, and he had just taken the job as the brewmaster at Goose Island. So unbeknownst to me, he was coming in and trying my beers while I was brewing at that brew pub. He approached me one day and said he really enjoyed my beers, introduced himself, and asked me if I wanted a job. So the first time I worked at Goose Island was about a year and a half, and then I transferred out to one of our sister breweries, which is Blue Point in New York. I was out there for a little over a year, and I decided that I wanted to see what else was out there. Working for the big production breweries, I wanted to see what each one offered and why they were each successful. So I worked for Bell's once again, and then I worked for Lagunitas Brewing Company for a brief time before deciding that Goose was really the place that I wanted to be. And I've been back at Goose now for a little over a year and a half. Oh, absolutely. I think every brewery has its own personality, and I think you can really see it in their products and their beer. And everyone has a specialty, So, say Lagunitas is known for their big bruiser, hoppy beers. Bell's has a very raw way of brewing that comes through in their product that really shines a light on some of the raw materials that they use. So those types of processes were really influential as far as my development in beer, and bringing that back to what I do every day and try to incorporate in what we do at Goose Island. So in the Fulton Street Brewery, we have 26 brewers on the floor, not including our brewers that work in their managerial or support staff roles, such as the head brewer, brewmaster, cellar manager, those types of roles. And then at the barrel warehouse, we have the barrel head as well as 6 brewers there. And then our pub employs 2 brewers in Chicago. And then the other pubs all have various staff. Some of the pubs have 2 to 3 brewers depending on the size and how often they have to brew. So I work primarily on the hot side at this point. When I worked there the first time, I was a cold side operator, so I worked in the cellar. I'm working on fermentation and filtration. Currently, though, I've moved upstairs to the brew house. So my role right now is more of uh, a mentoring role, really. So to hopefully help some of the new brewers that come in and pass along some of the knowledge that I've had from my career. But I also still make wort every day. So I still take grain and go through the entire process in order to make a fermentable product, send down to the cellars to ferment. Sure, so we operate on a 50-barrel brew house. It's a 5-vessel system in a traditional style. And then we also have tied into it now some new equipment. We've got a mash filter and a trube decanter as well. So we basically essentially have 2 different breweries in the same location. We're able to drop a new beer of lighter styles, like a 312 or a Honkers, those styles. We can start a new batch of beer about every 2.5 hours. On big brands such as Bourbon County, it takes us almost 9 hours to get one turn of Bourbon County through the system. So depending on the day, we're either very busy, or we get to have a mild day brewing some Bourbon County and let the equipment do a little more work while we can focus on some of our side projects. Okay. So a typical day is definitely wort production. So I come in and we'll work on whatever recipes are coming down the line. So stage some raw materials for the shift, maybe for myself or the brewer following me. And the typical day starts typical fashion of brewing beers. So start up the mill, get some grain going, and once we're milled in, start the wort production process. So depending on what style of beer we're brewing, it'll go into our lauter tun or our mash filter and chase it through the system. So we'll collect our sweet wort, hop it up, make sure we get a nice good flavor there, make sure it's good, clean, hits our specs, what we want as far as color, original gravity, send it over to the whirlpool and cool it down and get it out into our cellars. That's usually the typical day. On a typical brew day on a hot side, you usually have one support member and one person operating the brew house. In the cellar on any given shift, you'll have anywhere from 2 to 5 people depending on the workload. And we stagger our shifts out so that we can make sure everybody has enough support throughout the day. Absolutely. We encourage a lot of people to try to bring forward any ideas they have. We have some programs that really cultivate new ideas, as well as we ask people that we end up traveling quite a bit and seeing experiencing a lot of different things. So currently, I'm working on a Belgian beer, Pater beer, which is available in our tap room right now. Hoping we can scale it up if there's enough success of it and bring it out to the market. I've worked on some collaboration brews with some of our brew pubs in the other cities across the world. I just finished a project with another small brew pub that's local to us called All Rise. So we did a collaboration brew with them. So there's always something in the works. As I mentioned, I interned. So originally I wasn't making any money. I was living off of savings and odd jobs, picking up bar shifts where I could, and that was the way that I was able to survive as an intern. Going to brewing school, it pretty much took every penny I had saved at the time. I sold my car, sold my motorcycle, pretty much became homeless and went over to brewing school. So it's definitely a change of pace from the building trades. Building trades in Chicago usually do pretty well. So that was definitely a big hit. And then coming back, realizing that brewers at the time, craft was such a small industry. Nobody was really making a decent wage, and you worked a lot of hours. So you'd work 60, 70 hours a week, not really have enough at the end of the day to pay the bills and try to have to eke by. So probably about the first year I was brewing, I think I survived on beans and rice. So it was a little difficult. So the program that I took takes roughly 12 weeks. It's a proficiency program, so as fast as you can test out is as fast as you can pass. The quickest you can usually test out is about 12 weeks. So Doman's Academy portion is 7 weeks, and then there's 5 weeks in Chicago. It was great. We had the opportunity, the way the scheduling was set up and the way that some of the courses were designed, it's designed for you to get out and experience the beer culture there. So you get to see the beer gardens. We visited a lot of the German breweries, Spaten, Paulaner, Franziskaner. Got to go to Andex, which is the monastery there that's still brewing beer. So it was a wonderful experience as far as not only seeing, that was the first time I was ever out of the country. So not only did I get to experience that for the first time, but I got to see a really deep culture that had something to do with where I was going with my career and my life. Oh, sure. The first brewer that I ever interned under was also the first guy to give me a job as a professional in brewing, Nick Barron. He also ended up working for Goose for a little while. He has now since moved on. He's pursuing a career as a consultant in the brewing industry, but he's probably one of the most passionate technical brewers I know, and he's just a wonderful mentor. Still keep in contact with him to this day, so really, really great individual. Then I mentioned that I started working at Goose because the brewmaster was coming in and drinking my beers and offered me a job. We've become really good friends as well. So not only is he a great friend, but he's a mentor. He came from the chemistry side of brewing, and he's just an extremely intelligent individual who his goal in life is to try to improve everything he can about what you have the ability to do. So his name's Jared Jankowski. So he's our brewmaster now, and he's still at the brewery every day, and he's trying to pass on as much knowledge as he can, try to make sure that everybody is not only happy but also successful. A lot of my go-to beers. I like to have a shifty after work, right? So as part of our pay is to get a beer after work. I typically pick something a little bit lighter. You know, it's that first one after work. It always tastes great as soon as you clock out. So I always drink a 312 or an IPA. From Goose, some of my favorites are Sophie. I really like sour beers, so our sour beers I think are really wonderful interpretations of Belgian style. From other breweries around the area, I like to go to the different pubs, so I like to see what seasonals they have offering. I think it's a good way to showcase the brewer's skill as well as kind of what the market looks like, what people like, what they're drinking, maybe see some new styles, use an ingredient I haven't used before. But in my fridge, there's always 312. I think for the most part there is. A lot of the breweries that started in Chicago were originally employed by Goose. So they came out of Goose and they took their knowledge they learned there and started their own breweries. Since then, obviously, people have come from all different walks of life and started breweries because they're passionate about craft beer. And we definitely do reach out and do collaborations with people. They reach out to us. It's not uncommon when you walk into our tap room or another tap room that there's brewers from other breweries sitting there, and you know, they're talking about the next big thing that they think is going to happen, or this a weird ingredient they found they're going to use. So it's a pretty open, friendly competition, which is really good. Right now, the trend is definitely New England style beers, New England style IPAs, which is good. I think they're good, solid beers, but for a long time, craft beer has been chasing trends. And I think coming down the line in the future, we're going to start to see brewers doing more of what they want to do instead of chasing trends. As craft beer started, we needed to make sure we kept the consumer happy. It's important. It's important the beer drinker enjoys what we make. But now people are getting as educated as the brewers are. People are starting to learn what they do and don't like about beer. And that's giving us a little bit more of a window to say, hey, this is kind of what we like right now. Maybe you guys might like it too, and be able to do, instead of chasing that trend of that New England IPA, let's say, that's going on right now, we can maybe start a new trend. Or maybe there is no more trends. Maybe it's just a giant diverse world where everybody just kind of gets to pick and choose what they like as far as new experiences go. I don't know if it's possible to really saturate the market. I mean, obviously, most business models would say you can definitely saturate the market with a certain product, but people are developing business models more that have a more hyper-local focus. So even very small towns that maybe didn't have breweries before that have one of those 6,000 breweries that's opened up, people are going to their neighborhood bar again. They're going to their neighborhood brew pub, and there's a lot more than 6,000 neighborhoods out there. So I think that there's definitely more room to grow, and I think that that's really going to highlight a lot of diversity and that hyper-local idea that craft kind of embodies. Um, I would like to see people to stop focusing on the negative. It's a really easy thing to do to pick apart maybe some of the mergers and buyouts that have happened from a negative aspect. When craft beer first started, people were definitely focused on the idea that it wasn't big beer. Um, and there are still independent large breweries out there, but I think people tend to forget that maybe breweries such as Goose Island, that's part of the AB InBev network, um, we didn't sell out because we wanted to sell out who we were. We had the opportunity to continue to grow and expand globally. In our case, our owner was over 70 years old. He wanted to retire. His next heir wanted to move on a little bit and start another venture. So, the people I think tend to forget that there's not always one reason why people make these mergers and move on. Some of it's the ability to expand. Some small breweries don't have the ability to distribute, so they need a partnership, and some of these larger companies definitely offer things like that. I'm a big foodie, so I tend to cook quite a bit. Not always successfully, but try to do my best. In my leisure time, I also I enjoy powerlifting. So it's definitely a step away from the craft beer world to try to focus on being a little healthy. We tend to eat a lot, drink a lot, and have a lot of fun. So I like to try and focus a little bit on improving myself. Ultimately, I hope to one day own my own pub. I'd love to have my own brew pub to take all the things that I've learned throughout my career and apply them to something that would hopefully be unique, that still pulls from all those inspirations that I've had in the past. For the time being, though, definitely focus on continuing to learn. Everything from the new equipment that we've installed at the brewery, that, getting that experience, new recipe development, some of the new ingredients that are out there. There's new breeds of hops that come out every day. Just trying to catch up to what's there. It could be a full-time job in itself. So definitely improving myself through learning everything I can would definitely be the first step for the immediate future. Although it's small, it's got a lot of legs. There's tons of passion. People are really excited about it. Everywhere I've gone so far has really been overly welcoming and excited to a point of little kids at Christmas. And it's been great. It's been amazing. So it's been a wonderful experience. It can only get better. I just have to say thanks. Embracing craft beer and being passionate about it, it's shown since my foot got off the plane. So without the craft beer community, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be able to do it. So a big thanks to them, I think, is probably the most important thing to say.